Hello. So I'm going to do something that's sort of slightly unusual. Oh, I didn't know that would come through, for me at least, in discussing a subject, and that's express an element of hope. I first started covering energy and climate at this. This is the 2009 Copenhagen Climate Summit, where I was embedded with the protesters. And we had an absolutely marvellous time. We slept in a school hall. We spent a lot of time discussing Noam Chomsky and playing the bongos. Every now and then we would get arrested by the Danish police and taken to a cage on the outskirts of the city and have to come back. There's one particular, let's see if I can get to, yeah, there were these guys. There's one particular incident that I remember. So on the last day of the UN conference, they were determined to make a splash. And they got this plan. They weren't going to tell me I was a lackey of the Murdoch Empire, but I knew they'd got a big plan coming. And it had to be quite clever because we were searched by the police whenever we left our school hall. So it had to be some sort of scheme which would get past the police and appear innocuous. And we were going on this big protest, and we were pretty certain that, as had happened all of the other times, we were going to get kettled, we were going to get pepper sprayed, and that was going to be the end of it. But they wouldn't tell me what it was. And so it was absolutely freezing, and we went around on this planned march, and as expected, we got kettled, and we were on three sides with the police. On the fourth side, there was a canal, very close to freezing, but not quite there. And we were there, and that's when they said, the British climate camp protesters, they said, right, it's time. And 8 of them got out from their rucksacks inflatable mattresses. And the police watched. The police hadn't got a clue what was going on, and neither had I. And they got these inflatable mattresses, and they tied them together, and they made this pontoon bridge, which very slowly processed across the canal, with one of them at the front of it. So they worked out where we were going to be kettled. And as they got almost to the other end of the canal, obviously the police had plenty of time to come round. And they brought their police dogs, and they were there snarling. And at that point, and bear in mind, most of these protesters were vegans, one of them said, "Send forward the sausages." And they passed forward this load of sausages, which they then threw at the police dogs. And no matter how well-trained your police dog is, that's going to be it. And the police dogs munched down on the sausages, and there was this dash of the British protesters as they powered towards the conference hall to have their say. And obviously they were all pepper sprayed, all arrested, and that was the end of that. And why do I bring this up? I bring this up because it was a marvellous example of British engineering in the cause of climate change, and it was utterly futile. And it feels like there's something of a metaphor there. And for a long time, I would have said that is sort of a metaphor for what we're doing. For a long time, we found it quite hard to cover climate change in the paper, not because there's some sort of diktat to not cover climate change, it's just because the story doesn't change. The story is we're doomed, it's bad, we're doomed. In the last few months, perhaps as much as a year, I've sensed a change in that. I have reported, as Alistair said, on plans for hydrogen boilers, and not just plans for hydrogen boilers. I've gone and seen Worcester Bosch making a hydrogen boiler that they've got ready to go. In Kiel, they've got a scheme for seeing how hydrogen will be inserted into the grid. I've gone and seen heat pumps, major heat pump operations, being installed. I've reported on the first proper carbon capture and storage. We haven't spoken about carbon capture and storage. It's obviously absolutely essential to what's going to happen. All of our plans for 2050 rely on carbon capture and storage, and it's a technology that doesn't exist. But Tata Steel are building one that's going to be finally at scale and is going to do something with this carbon, and it's exciting. And I think for the first time, I would slightly modify things. I think it would definitely be wrong and possibly counterproductive to be optimistic. I would say I'm cautiously pessimistic, but for the first time in a long time, I'm not fatalistic, because there are engineers and they're doing things, and that's a lot more powerful than bongos.